everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tim.
Wait, but Peter was killed with fire, and I was killed with water. How can we use that?
We'll be talking a lot about horror acting, don't you worry. That's going to be a big topic of today's show. We are a horror movie podcast. We talk about horror movies every week. We get together, we talk about a movie that we watched, and this is kind of a, not quite the culmination yet, because we still have remakes to go, but this is going to be so this is technically the 11th Jason movie and the 8th Freddy Krueger movie. This is Freddy vs. Jason, the crossover to end all crossovers.
And I kind of consider this the true finale of both franchises, because the only ones we have after this are the remakes, and come on.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for Freddy, because I mean, it's true for both of them, really, because obviously there's a remake, but I think that the Freddy remake is a lot more like a Friday the 13th movie.
Sure.
Whereas Freddy was always played by Robert Englund, and this is his last one, and then the remake, someone new. It really feels like a different thing. So video viewers will notice that Tim's camera is not on. There's a photograph of Tim with some kangaroos. That is because his internet's been acting up and it keeps dropping out because of the video. The audio is much more stable, so this is just for a more refined experience overall. Hopefully we'll get his video back for other episodes. But here we go. So we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. So Freddy vs. Jason was kind of a big deal for me when it came out, because in 2003, this was the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and it wasn't the first Jason, because Jason X was 2001. So, but this was the first Nightmare on Elm Street that came out since I'd gotten into horror movies, and it was only the second Jason movie. So it was a very big deal at the time because of that.
I think in general, that definitely is a big deal, and I think same for me, because this would have been early 2000s, and then the last Friday or Jason movies were.
Well, like I said, Jason X was 2001, but the last Freddy movie was 1994. That was Nightmare.
So definitely didn't see that. But I mean, even before that, though, if you take that out of the equation, I feel like this is something that, as kids, we talked about growing up, all the time, it was just always who'd win in a fight between these two, and I don't know. I feel like it's something that had been a long time coming, and especially if you look at the production, because they wanted to make this movie for a really, really long time. I think at least 10 years or so.
I think basically since Jason Goes to Hell, because of the ending, right? The ending teased the Freddy vs. Jason.
But if you are kind of interested in movies that never happened or alternative scripts, there's a book called Slash of the Titans that follows all the different script iterations this went through. So I think there was about maybe 9 or 10 different versions, and I read it a while ago. So I don't have everything on memory, but maybe at the end of the episode I'll kind of go over some of the different versions and ideas that they had for this.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I know. I believe one of the scripts was actually written by James Robinson, if you can believe it.
Wow, that's actually pretty funny. I think they mentioned one or two of them on some of the extras on the DVD back in the day whenever I watched those, but I mean, I don't really remember. It's been so long. But yeah, you could tell some of those at the end. So this is the weird thing about this, is that this was the first V's movie, really, unless you count all the Godzilla sequels, but I hadn't seen any of those at the time. And it's funny how we got this, and then 1 year later was Alien versus Predator, and then that was it. We had two big V's movies, and then the world's kind of said no. They don't work that well. Let's not do them. And I liked this at the time when it came out, but when it came out I was 14, right? And it was and it was this big thing. Watching this now, a lot of it has not aged particularly well. It feels so early 2000s in a lot of ways. There's a lot of new metal in the soundtrack, right from the get-go. I noticed the really bad CGI, opening titles with the CGI blood hitting a wall or whatever. It just looks shit. Like it looks like absolute shit. So there's that. But I mean, how do you feel about Freddy vs Jason after like you're watching it again now?
I think I'm a little mixed. I think there's a lot a lot of negatives. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's I have a an entire grocery list of complaints go through. But at the same time, there is definitely some fun stuff. I think ultimately my takeaway is it's hard to bring franchises together in like a really neat and cohesive way. Um, and I think there's definitely like talented people that can do it, but I feel like, if you have maybe not the biggest budget horror movies and stuff, like maybe you can't always afford like,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest people and stuff. So I don't know. I think my ultimate takeaway is like, this is probably the best they could have done. Like, I'll tell you for sure, I'll take it, way over, Alien versus Predator. Like that's for sure. I think at least this is fun to revisit from time to time. But yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff in it. I think like one thing I'll say right off the back, like we'll get into more detailed stuff, but like you were saying earlier, I hate the look of this movie. There's so much like blue tint to it, and
Mm-hmm.
um
So it's very 2000s. That what you're talking
yeah
about is so 2000s. I I hate how like it's obsessed with moving quickly all the time. Like as I said at
yeah
the start, when it first introduces to Jason at the start, and he's on Crystal Lake, and he's going after like some topless woman who's skinny dipping or whatever. Um, like the entire sequence plays out almost as if it's on like this weird sped up like kind of like pacing because it just wants to
yeah
introduce Jason kind of in his element, rather than feel like a real Jason scene. So first of all, I'd fix that. Like the movie's obsessed with being a music video. Like so much of the kill
totally
stuff feels like a music video rather than it does a movie.
yeah
So that would be like my big issue. Apart from the characters who are mostly terrible,
yeah
some of the actors especially are like the main girl. What's her name? Monica Keena, I want to say.
Lori
Yeah, that's the actress. Monica Keena. Yeah, Laurie's the character. She is one of the worst lead actresses I've ever seen in a mainstream horror movie. Every single time it cuts to her reactions shots, like not even saying, I mean, the dialogue's bad. I'm not saying her dialogue isn't bad. I'm saying even before she opens her mouth, the way she looks at things or reacts to things just with her eyes and her mouth is
and
garbage. It's like everything about it is just like laughable.
and it's always the same exact reaction. Like, like by halfway through the movie, I just want to be like, all right, stop looking so surprised at this point. Like, you know what the deal is, you know what's going on, but it's like, yeah, like every time something happens, she has like this freak out, like, oh my God, how could this happen? It's like, honey, you're in a horror movie. Get with the program.
So she's terrible. She's not the only bad actor though by any means. The deputy cop who kind of helps the kids at one point, I thought he was particularly bad as well.
Yeah, what freaking Van Wilder movie did that guy step out of? Like, get this Ryan Reynolds reject out of here, Jesus Christ.
So cast.
I don't need a cop with like high like frost tips.
Do you know the thing about this is that I feel like, with the exception of a couple of people, right? Obviously, Robert Englund is Robert Englund. I will say I was always miffed back in the day when Kane Hodder wasn't brought back for Jason, even though he wanted to be. That's the upsetting part, is we know that he wanted to. Like, he was looking forward to it. See, if you watch the documentary that's on the Jason X DVD, it's on the Blu-ray now as well, I think. It's called The Many Lives of Jason Voorhees. It's like a 3-hour, or not 3 hours, sorry, half-hour documentary about Jason. It's an alright little watch. It's a bit compromised because they only have clips from like 9 and 10 because they don't have the rights to the rest of the footage at that point when they made it. But I remember at the end when they talk about possibly doing a Freddy vs Jason movie at the time, because it hadn't happened yet. Ken Hodder was really excited about it and really wanted to do it. So I remember feeling like sad when there's like, oh no, they've recast Jason because they wanted someone else. I watched this on stream last night with some of our loyal audience members, and it was pointed out. Cindy pointed out that Jason looks too skinny And he totally does. Like, his neck just looks like a normal dude's neck. He's meant to be bulky. He's meant to feel like he's larger than life. You know, Jason's not Michael. Jason's meant to feel like he's a bit more of a Hulk zombie in a lot of ways.
Well, wasn't that one of the reasons why they didn't go with him, because they wanted someone that was like a lot taller?
They wanted someone taller, yeah. And Ken Hodder's tall enough. Like, what?
Like, I think the idea was like, they were like, oh no, like, yeah, Freddy should be this kind of like wormly, like tiny guy, and then Jason should be like this big brooding guy. And but it's like, come on, like Kane Hodder, yeah, he's huge. Like, it's gonna look fine, and like, yeah, had, you know, kind of a reputation now as being like the Jason guy. It's really a really dick move not to go with him.
It's a dick move. It's a
and I could be wrong, but like, because I feel like I've heard him talk about it in like multiple interviews and documentaries and stuff. But wasn't there like an idea going in that he was going to be it, and then like it was kind of like all of a sudden it was like no?
I think so. I think it was expected up until the very last like minute or whatever, which it just hurts a little bit more. Just hurts a little bit more. So I think the only other actor in the movie that I like, and the only because I was joking when I was watching the movie that they genuinely cast some of the actors in this because of their boobs, right? Like the lead actress, like she's constantly in tight tops that are, and the camera's always like, the boobs are always pointing at the camera. They're always like looking down at cleavage. Like, and don't get me wrong, a lot of movies, horror movies especially, are guilty of this. So this is not unique to this movie, but it felt so constant throughout this, and there's no acting ability. The only actor in the movie, outside of obviously Robert Englund, who's back because he's Freddy, that I quite liked, is Catherine Isabel, and I feel like the only reason why she was cast in this is because she became like a horror like star because of Ginger Snaps. Like, I think that's the only reason why they brought her on board. And
I mean,
everyone else is just whatever.
Yeah, no, like she's actually great. Like, you know, she's a very good actress. She has like screen presence. And yeah, it's unfortunate she is like gone pretty early on. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, she's like of that gang or whatever. She was the only one I really gave a shit about. I think one of the things that really annoys me about this is like these are all completely new characters, but they try to make it feel like they are important, like that they have like a legacy to. I guess it would just be Nightmare. Like they don't really have any ties to Jason.
How much better do you think this concept wise a Freddy v Jason movie would be if it was Nancy teaming up with, say, like the final girl from like Friday the 13th Part 2 or something like that?
Well, yeah, I totally thought the same thing. Like I was thinking, who the hell is who's the Corey Feldman kid from Friday? What's his name?
Tommy Jarvis.
Yeah, I know it's Tommy, but I always confuse Jarvis with Doyle.
No, you're right. But he probably makes more sense actually. Yeah, get Nancy and Tommy like teaming up, like.
Yeah,
because there's parts of the setup of this that I quite like. Actually, it was just one last acting thing before I move on to my premise points. Is that did you notice Evangeline Lilly in this movie?
Oh no,
she's an extra in the high school scene early on, and it's something I noticed way back when. Probably whenever I watched this for the first time after Lost became a thing, because Lost started a year after this came out. But she's there as an extra in the high school, so you can see her. She's there. Wasp / Kate from Lost is just hanging out in the background of Freddy v Jason. So still a better performance than most of the cast though. Just FYI. Anyway, so the premise, so there's some stuff in the premise and how they bring stuff together that I don't hate, right? I kind of like the idea that the town of, I always forget the name of the town actually. Springwood, thank you. The town is kind of forgotten Freddy exists, right? And that's how they kind of win, is that if the kids don't know he exists, no one fears him and he has no power. I don't mind that. I'm okay with that. And totally. I'm okay with the idea of Freddy like using Jason to make people scared into remembering him. I also kind of like that. I'm into that. And then of course the idea that Jason won't stop killing and Fred doesn't like it, therefore the conflict arises. All that stuff I love. Let's say I love, but all of it's good. All of it works. All of it could be great.
I think like, you know, the toughest part of a, you know, versus movie or a made-up movie is how do you get the characters together, and I actually think this is a pretty smart, clever way to get them,
Yeah.
together.
The problem is how much bullshit the movie retcons to try and give them both weaknesses, and then
Yeah.
like how there's just like leaps in logic, how the characters react to things, like the decisions they make. Like, how much better would this be, right? If let's go back to the idea that this is Nancy and Tommy are going to be the characters, right? And obviously they don't know each other at first, but let's say Freddy does his plan to bring Jason to Springwood to, make everyone remember, right? And let's say Tommy follows Jason there because he's hunting down Jason, because he's, after all these years, he's still hunting down Jason, trying to stop him every time he gets back. And he gets to Springwood, and then Freddy Krueger stuff starts happening, and he can't quite understand it. And, he has to sort of look it up, and it leads him to Nancy for help, because he just doesn't understand this weird, supernatural, I mean, Jason's a little supernatural because he keeps coming back to life, but other than that, he's a dude with a machete. Like, he doesn't understand it, so they end up having to team up to like save everyone or save the town or whatever. And I do think, like, I mean, the reason why they go there I don't love, but I do think it makes sense that ultimately, they're fighting in Springwood all movie, they have to fight in Crystal Lake by the end, right? We have to somehow get to Crystal Lake so we're on the other home turf by the end of the movie. I do also think that you kind of have to treat Jason as the lesser of the two evils, and therefore he's the one that the audience is rooting for, because Freddy, I mean, this movie especially starts with a flashback explaining Freddy's backstory. Like, they always implied stuff in the previous movies. This movie straight up is like, no, he's a pedophile who murdered children. Like the movie, like,
it's super gross. I think like I mean, we all know like that, but like, you don't have to say it. Like, when they photograph it like way too much in this movie, and it's like, oh, it's always such a bad move. Like, just get away from that. Like, we can all kind of infer or understand what's going on when you say he's a child murderer. Like,
I mean, I to be fair, I think one of the previous movies did say the word, right? But it was someone saying it in a separate scene. I think what's wrong about this is that it feels like a typical, like, back flashback sort of prologue scene, and it feels a bit cheesy, and it feels wrong to have a cheesy scene about that. Like, it's just kind of weird.
Yeah, definitely.
But like,
it's gross. Like, seeing him like licking the pictures and like looking at little kids, like, it's gross. We don't need to see it. We get it.
So that's a bit rough. But so some of the ideas aren't bad, and then there's other stuff that they force in that just feels so forced and whatever. What the movie does kind of deliver on, though, is that once we finally get to the fight, which I don't think it's a spoiler to say that, eventually they get to have a proper fight in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah,
that fight's mostly pretty fun, right? It's over the top, it's silly. I want it to be silly. Yeah, it's it's a wrestling match. Like, I was expecting steel chairs and ladders at one point. Like, why not?
At one point, like, Freddy's doing like some, like, I don't know, like knees to the stomach and stuff, and I was like surprised. I was like, I would have thought of Freddy as like a fighter, but it looks like he is doing like some proper like wrestling moves or something.
So I mean, that stuff's fine, but the characters, like all the stuff that has to sort of string it along to make it more of a movie, kind of suffers. And I think that's where it would really have helped to have some characters from other movies, to have the crossover, not just be the villains, but also be Nancy and Tommy or whoever, and have them like kind of anchor the human side of the plot. Because obviously, I mean, Freddy and Jason are technically humans in some way, but it's kind of like how in a Godzilla movie, like, people often say, oh, the humans are the worst part, right? Like, you have Godzilla fighting Ghidorah, but the humans are the worst part. I think that's true for a lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. But the best ones tend to get around that by having good characters or having good humans that we care about or whatever. And I think anchoring that side of the plot, having the regular human characters who are going through the story, like, try to fight back. I think the frustrating thing is having a bunch of characters who don't know what's going on at first. So, and because with this movie, like, we're so familiar with Freddy and Jason at this point that we don't want to waste time with characters who don't believe that Freddy exists, or characters who don't understand what's going on. It's frustrating. And I think starting with Nancy and Tommy, even if they don't know each other yet, and obviously one of them doesn't understand the other's character, but eventually they can sort of like team up, and like there would be just as much excitement in that as the actual Freddy and Jason stuff, I think. So that is what it is. yeah, we'll give the spoiler warning so we can actually talk about the events of the movie and talk about the details. So yeah, but before we start spoilers, I will thank our Patreon producers for the month. Thank you to David Short, Alison M. Fordyce, Cindy Palacios, and Tyler Hess. They're all producers at the $20 tier or not, but you can support us on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV is where you go. For that $1 per month, you get access to an exclusive bonus episode every single month. There's a back catalogue of about 15 or so episodes now. There's a new one every month for that $1. And then, of course, at the $5 tier, you get the episodes a day early, and you also get to vote on an episode once per month. So go and have a look and see if you're interested in keeping all the content coming and showing your support. And we thank all the patrons loads. But hey, movie.
I do want to say real quick that
Yes.
it does kind of bum me out because I am more of a Freddy fan, than a Jason fan, and I think it's kind of a bummer because I think this is a better Jason movie than a Freddy movie. Like,
I agree.
all the best kills, I think, come from Jason. I actually will say I think Jason has some like pretty cool kills in this. Like the bed kill, I think is pretty cool. Like, some of the shit he does in like the rave cornfield or whatever, like, is pretty cool. But, like, all the Freddy stuff is lame. Like like what does Freddy do? Like he doesn't really have any like cool dream sequences. Like all the stuff is like seems like it's always in like the same like boiler room or like whatever. And then like I don't know, the one maybe crazy thing he does is like that drug caterpillar thing, which is dumb as hell.
And it's dated horrible because the CG looks absolute garbage.
Looks so bad.
Joe, the funny thing is that I agree and disagree at the same time. Like I think.
Go on.
I think Jason definitely has the better kills. In fact, someone looked up when we were watching on stream. Jason has over 180 kills across all the movies. Freddy has like 40 something. Like Jason has way more kills. But Jason, like, he does have the kills, right? And the kills are I think are good in theory. I think, like, I don't think Ronnie Yu, who directed this, knew how to like actually like sort of shoot a Jason kill scene though. They all feel a little bit. There's a little bit too much CG in the kills for me. There's a lot of CG blades coming through things, CG blood spatter. They kind of ruin a lot of them for me. Even as fun as the bed folding in half with the body is and stuff like that. And I don't understand. I don't understand why Jason. Like, I always got that he was stronger. But why does he like have like Superman level strength in this? At one point in the cornfield, he throws a guy, and the guy goes into the air like Superman threw someone into the sky. He arcs up into it's like what's that example here? I don't know. It's like in Superman 4. I don't know why I'm referencing Superman 4, but in Superman 4, Superman throws a baseball at one point, and it like. And the dog who's going to catch the baseball turns around and looks at him because the baseball just goes flying. That's what it feels like. And I'm like, why is he this strong? This is like ridiculously strong.
Yeah, it is, again, like, it does feel very cartoon-like to the point where it's like he's dropping, like, glow sticks are falling from him as he falls, which is like kind of funny, but I don't know if it's what you want in the movie.
Yeah. Also, we have to talk about that scene actually, because that scene at the rave. So gross. Yeah, this raver who's covered in glow sticks is actually, and I was saying this during the stream that. So Catherine Isabel's character, who her boyfriend is the one who gets killed in the bed earlier. The bed folds up, and this is the start of like people starting to get scared, and Freddy's only just starting to be strong enough. But she's passed out from drinking too much in the cornfield because the kids are having a rave in the cornfield because. I don't know, 2000s, I guess. And she's in like the boiler room and she's been chased by Freddy and that's all going on. And, it looks like a Freddy dream sequence. Maybe not an inspired one, but they're doing the shadow on the wall and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And as she's passed out, we have this raver who sees her passed out and starts to sexually assault her, starts to, like, rape her as she's asleep. And I was sitting there thinking, like, this is super dark and horrific, and I could almost see the potential in like this like double whammy of like horror in a really serious movie, like a really serious like horror movie. But it's not treated like that. The movie doesn't treat like what's happening to her in the real world right now as if it's a big deal. It's I don't want to say it's meant to be a punchline, but or comical, but it's borderline. Like, it almost feels like it wants it to just be. Look at how crazy this is. Someone's like trying to kiss her while she's passed out on the floor and she's actually running for her life. I don't know, like, there's something really like I don't.
It's really gross. I think it's like it's too like real. I think to be in this very silly horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, if you're doing a very serious dark movie and you're treating it with the like levity of an act like that is, it could work. Like it'd still be a bummer to watch, but at least you could understand what they're doing. While yeah, here it does feel like a little too blasé, and yeah, it's yeah, it is cool when Jason like throws that guy off, but yeah, it's still gross seeing it lead up to it.
I think
Like
part of the problem is the tone shift, because I mean, I don't think it's filmed very well anyway as it's happening. It doesn't feel
yeah,
like it's treating it with the weight that it deserves. But if you had like sort of like a really tensely shot, like this guy sort of looking over, and you sort of realize what he's about to do, you could build a good grotesque bit of suspense out of it in a way that doesn't feel like it's as nasty and cheap. Uh, but even if they did do that, the biggest problem with this is that it's intercutting with the dream sequence, and it's like Freddy cracking one-liners and Freddy being like, comical Freddy, and it's like you're cutting
yeah.
between that and like a rate. It was like this doesn't work. It's this, it just doesn't.
And it also kind of feels like maybe not quite on this level, but like how like people point out that scene in a Jurassic World when like that random lady is just like gets that really over the top death where like
Mm,
the pterodactyls are constantly like dragging her and throwing her in the air, and then she falls in the water, and then like the big thing eats her,
yeah,
like where it just feels like over the top. And why are you torturing this lady? Like I kind of get like a little bit of a that vibe here where it's like, hey, like we like this character. Why does it seem like she's getting so much more shit on than like other characters who just get like a quick death where like, because even in like the Freddy thing, it's not like he's trying to kill her quickly. It's like, she's like falling off the, like balcony thing, and then like falls to the floor, and then like has to crawl, and then yeah, you're intercutting it with her being sexually assaulted. It's like, all right, this is like overkill.
yeah. At least the Jurassic World one's still just kind of fun because it's just
Sure.
dinosaurs eating someone. Like it's not a big deal,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah. No, I get what you're saying. No, um. But this is the one, of course, where Freddy's about to kill her and Jason stabs her when she's asleep. And Freddy's like, "No, she was mine. She was mine. God damn it!" Thus like setting up the conflict. So
And
yeah,
whenever like Freddy kind of like he's practically talking to the camera, but like it's so cheesy. Like I understand like, he's just setting up the like, the story or whatever, but it always feels like yeah, he's like almost breaking character, like looking at the camera and being like, "Oh, come on." Like I don't know, it's so dumb.
yeah, yeah. Freddy's humor in this is a little bit hit and miss. I mean, there's definitely moments that are fine, but there's a lot that isn't as well. I like so we have to talk about Will and his crazy friend Mark. From the mental hospital, who are both there because Mark knows about Freddy, and anyone who knows about Freddy gets put in the mental hospital so they can keep them under lock and key and drug them as much as possible to stop them from dreaming. Um,
Like
and
I think this is another part of the movie that I think is just like really weird, where it feels like they're trying hard to inject this backstory that we're not familiar with at all. When like
mhm.
I feel like you easily could have brought back a character from a previous Nightmare movie and like had him here.
I just love the Mark character. Like immediately because they escape really easily. By the way, it's like nothing happened. Like,
Yeah,
but
like that. You think the mental hospital would be like a big set piece or whatever, but no, it's like yeah, they're there and then they're gone.
yeah, but he scares the shit out of the main character Laurie, and he's just certifiable like still completely. But he dies relatively quickly. Like Freddy comes and gets him. He falls asleep and Freddy like nabs him. But what I hate about all this stuff is that they get all these ideas, all right. So why after the rave and they realize that okay, we've got Jason and they have the big Jason has the big fire like stunt set piece where he's walking through the cornfield on fire, which is is a fine thing.
Yeah.
And they're in the van and like okay, what do we do? And they're back at kind of the stoner's place and they're like, okay, how do we solve this? The younger cop comes to help them because the chief of police isn't telling them anything. And it's like, okay, so we can try and not go to sleep because there's this drug they gave us. Which, by the way, I love that Mark, who was determined to tell everyone about Freddy, when he realizes that the town's plan was that Freddy has no power if no one remembers him, he immediately goes, wait, if I screwed up the town's plan? I'm like, yes, you have. You've doomed everyone. Everything was fine until you opened your big fat mouth, you idiot. He inadvertently caused exactly what he was trying to stop. But he so they want this drug, right? This drug that they were giving up at the hospital, right? And it bugged me so much that they literally just looked this up on the internet and like found this experimental drug that's not even been approved by the FDA. It's like, oh, it's a drug that stops people from dreaming. Oh my god, it's so stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of the drug is interesting to introduce to the series, but yeah, the way they present it is very dumb, and the way they look it up. Actually, and going back a little bit, because you're kind of bringing up like how they kind of start to remember Freddy. I forgot, but like this is kind of stupid too, where like literally all it is like, when the cops are, when the first like, friend is murdered at the beginning, then the cops are like wheeling him out, and like someone's just like, oh, is it like, it's like Freddy, and then like someone's like, shut up, don't say it, and then like just other people just be like, what'd that cop say? Freddy? It must be Freddy. Like, it's like, that's not like, I don't think you'd really get that many people to all of a sudden remember this guy because of that.
No, and does really hearing the name Freddy even like make you, because you don't know who Freddy is, it's just
right,
the name.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. Like, unless like if it was something that like you kind of remembered before, and then you're like, wait a minute, oh yeah, that's that guy. But then yeah, if you have absolutely no idea who it is, then yeah, it's not really gonna have much effect on you.
Yeah, because the second kill is like this other kid and his dad, and I thought this was weird because the kid wakes up and the dad's been murdered, but for somehow Jason was able to slice this guy's neck, like completely decapitate him without any blood showing, and the dad's head's still on, so it falls off perfectly. And I'm like, he can't do that with a machete. I think the only way he could do that is with like a really fine like razor like wire or something like that, maybe that cuts really quickly.
Razor claws, maybe.
Razor. But yeah, so that struck me as odd as well. But so they have this plan. They go to the hospital to try and steal this drug. And Freddy actually, it turns out if you're high, Freddy can like get to you, and he takes over the stoner. And you think that he's going to pour away all the drug, but his actual plan is to give this drug. No, he does pour it away, but he gets another drug to put Jason to sleep, right? And he uses the stoner's body to drug Jason. Jason immediately kills the guy. Obviously, Fred doesn't care though because he's completed his task. The whole idea being that this will put Jason into sleep, so Freddy can attack him in the dream, right? So we get the first fight between them, which is on Freddy's home turf in the dream, where there's no rules and Freddy can do whatever he wants. So he has like we literally get a scene here where he's flying Jason around like a pinball. He's banging him around this big boiler room, and of course Jason can't die though, right? So he keeps trying to kill him, and like Jason just keeps getting back up because he's Jason. So he's frustrated, and then out of nowhere, this idea of Jason being scared of water, even though he is literally laying weight in water, like in like half a dozen movies by this point. Maybe you could argue that he's only scared of water in his dreams and he doesn't care in the real world, but
like maybe he's like scared of like toxic waste or something. But
I mean, after part 8, yeah, maybe. Because this is so annoying. But Jason is knocked out, and the others have this great idea to take Jason in the van because they want to try and save him so that Jason can kill Freddy. So maybe you'll have some insight here, Tim. Right? I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Is there any reason why when Laurie, our main character, played by Monica Keena, who can't act, she suggests, "I'll go to sleep and I'll go in and get Jason. I'll save Jason." Is there any reason why she thinks she has the ability to go into the same dream?
Yeah, I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. They're playing pretty fast and loose with the rules.
Because if you remember in Dream Warriors, right, the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie, like that was a plot point, but it was a big deal, right? It was like, oh, this one character has that ability, that
ability,
yeah. She can pull people into each other's dreams, and that was a big deal, and that's how they could fight back because they could team up. But for some reason, Laurie just thinks she can do this, and no one questions it. No one says, "Wait, how do you know you're going to go to his dream? Why would you not just be in your own dream?" Like,
Yeah.
no one even like ponders the question, which is so stupid. But they go to Crystal Lake. Yeah, but there is a lot more. See that the line you said at the start of the review. He's scared of fire, or he was defeated by fire. He was defeated by water. How can we use that?
Yeah.
That was the scene where she says that. That's when she's kind of dreaming for a little bit, and no one's listening to her. I just want to point this scene out because the shot in this scene was designed to just look down her top. Like there's this high angle, and like she's having this revelation moment. But again, I just want to emphasize the acting as she says those lines is terrible. Now I don't like this delivery because it was terrible as well. But I'm kind of disappointed. Do you remember the line that was in the trailer that they never put in the movie?
Not off the top of my head. No.
Basically, at the end of the trailer, after it builds up all the ideas, and then the title comes out saying Freddy versus Jason, and then it cut to her, and it's when they're spending around Crystal Lake, and there's the cabin's on fire, and she's sort of on she's on the ground looking up. So it says Freddy versus Jason, and it cuts to her in the trailer, and she goes, "Place your bets." So that's
Okay.
that's not in the movie. That was either just for the trailer or they just decided to take it out because it was bad. But they should have left it in because it's not exactly any worse than half the other crap in the movie.
Actually, you just reminded me though of like a really funny joke. 'Cause, going back a little earlier when you're talking about like that stoner kid, who, like he looks a lot like Jason Mewes from like the Jay and Silent Bob movies, which they did a funny joke in I think it's the Never Sleep Again documentary. When they get to talking about this, they they interview Jason Mewes and he's talking about like working on the movie, and then he just like stops and goes like, "Wait a minute, I wasn't in that movie." But like I think like a lot of people misremember him as the character, or it's just obvious that the character is modeled after him. But
Yeah,
I just thought it was funny.
I've seen that documentary. I don't remember that part, but I mean it was like 7 hours long, so
Yeah,
it's a lot to remember.
it's in some documentaries. If it's not that one, then the Jason one, maybe when they talked about it. But I know at some point, yeah, like in something where they're talking about this movie, they do that.
Yeah. Yeah, so they go to Crystal Lake, right? We've not actually mentioned the Destiny's Child the character.
Yeah.
Well, I say the character, the actress. So the best friend of Laurie is played by Kelly Rowland. Yeah, there you go. And
I hate this character. I think she's she's so hostile towards everything. It's like so annoying.
Yeah, well, the main character she's hostile towards is the nerdy kid who is basically the prototype for Miles Teller. He's the nerdy guy who's got a crush on the main girl, and Kelly Rowland's like really mean to him. But the kind of arc for them to make us care about both of them is that over the course of the movie, like she kind of comes to like respect them, and they kind of care about each other. Not in a romantic way, just that they seem to slightly earn. So that is like the closest thing to an arc for any characters, really, is them two. Both of them die though, of course. But
there's a sorry, there's a really funny reaction from Laurie when they're in the cornfield, and like Linderman, the nerdy guy, finally like stands up for himself, and he's like, "You know what, Kia? Like, you only like to put me down because you hate yourself," and blah 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 blah. And then like they cut to Laurie, and she has like this like reaction on her face where like, she's just like, "Oh my god, you said that!" Like, it's like so dumb, and especially like when it you take into account the fact that like they're partying after their friends have just been murdered. Like, it's such a weird reaction.
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
And we didn't even talk about the fact that like the whole scene where they have to give Jason mouth to mouth in the car.
I was just going to mention briefly because we're on the cornfield scene again. The two idiot teenagers who see a 7 foot tall, hockey mask wearing looking dude, and immediately start poking at him and making fun of him. Like, why is that a good idea? Like, what did you think was going to happen?
And you know what's weird about that too is like they're making like redneck jokes, like they're like, "Hey Jeffro, like get out of the cornfield, like you're like." It's like, what about him looks like a redneck? Like he's wearing a hockey mask. That's not like a farmer thing or something. Like, it's very weird.
Yeah, very, very odd. But yeah, you're right. There's a whole scene where Jason's kind of drowning like in the van because he's like coughing up water. Because the water comes from the dream, I guess. But
I guess.
like they're like, oh, you have to give him mouth to mouth, and Linda was, I've got asthma, I can't do it, and so she has to do it. And this is obviously as she's doing this is when Jason sets up in the van, and ends up crashing, and chaos. But so their deaths, I want to mention because he gets like stabbed or whatever, and he doesn't die right away though. There's a whole scene where she like takes him away. She's helping him, and he sits down next to a tree and he says, "Go back and help Laurie." And he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to leave you." And this is they're supposed to have bonded by this point, right? They care about each other. And he's like, "That's fine, go away." And she leaves and says she's going to come back soon. And when she goes away, like this is such an out of place like moment in the Jason movie or a Freddy movie or either it does this slow shot like going down to his hand and up to his face and with piano music playing of him dying there on his own, and I'm like, why is there an attempt like a genuinely sad death here? Like this is a Friday the 13th Nightmare on Elm Street crossover. Like this is the sort of sad death scene that you might get in like a movie with like like a good story with characters that we care about. That wants us to feel like really sad that someone we cared about like was left alone to die. It just doesn't work. And then I didn't hate the scene where Kelly Rowland like is like insulting Freddy, because it felt like she was using her powers of being a nasty bitch for good because she was taking on Freddy. And then
other than the infamous F-bomb they dropped.
Yes. And
which like I know like people used to say that with less abandon, but I feel like 2003 was still late to say that word.
Yeah, Jason of course is behind her though and hits her so hard with the machete that she flies off about 50 feet into a tree. Again, there's that super strength that's came into it. Anyway, so why is Freddy here? We kind of glossed over that part. So, if you remember the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie, one of the things that was tried in that is that Nancy realized that if she grabbed something from the dream world and woke up, she would bring it with her. And that was the big end game of Nightmare on Elm Street, is that she brought Freddy into the real world, set up some traps in the house. But the end of that movie kind of shows that it doesn't work, right? It kind of showed that even if you do that, he still comes back. So... Right. Which makes the ending of this, like, because we'd done that before in previous Elm Street movies and it didn't work, it was like, well, even if Jason defeats him, like, he's not gone for good. Like, it doesn't work. But sure enough, like Laurie goes, pulls him out into the real world. Oh, by the way, see when she first goes into the dream world and she ends up in Crystal Lake and she sees, like, Jason, like, as a little kid drowning and, like, the councils are just having sex at the cabin in front of all the kids.
Yeah.
And like, did you not think like at the start of that scene where she's there and the car goes in past her? Is this the exact scene that they were kind of like parodying in the Final Girls in the flashback scene?
Oh, maybe. I didn't think of that off the top of my head, but that can make sense.
Yeah, it was very similar. It's also just a possibility that this scene's so generic that they were parodying like a bunch of different movies, and this is just one of them. But
yeah. Also, like, I mean, I think. We didn't talk about it, but I guess it's pretty convenient that like Springwood and Camp Crystal Lake are like that close.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty. I don't know if they ever said what state Springwood is in. I always thought it was Ohio for some reason.
Well, we know Crystal Lake, I'm pretty sure, is in New Jersey.
Yes.
We know that.
Yeah.
I don't know if where Springwood is.
I could be wrong. For some reason, I thought it was Ohio, but I mean, like it's not like unfathomable that you couldn't get from one to the other.
Wait,
but it would.
Are you telling me that this is the inspiration for Zack Snyder putting Metropolis and Gotham across the water from each other?
Maybe.
Also a V's movie, no Batman v Superman. These V's movies do not have a good track record. Is all I'm saying.
But. I mean, if it is like Ohio to New Jersey, I mean, I feel like that's got to be like at least like probably 5 or 6 hours. I mean, maybe if I'm being generous, I don't know. I could be wrong, but
I feel like it'd be more than that. I mean, not that I've ever made the trip, but like my understanding of geography is that even like Pennsylvania to like New Jersey would probably be that.
Well,
probably more.
I mean, Pennsylvania is gigantic. It's a very big state because I was originally born there, so we would drive from Rhode Island to Pennsylvania to visit family when I was younger, and it would be about maybe 12 to 14 hour drive. But we were all on like the west end of Pennsylvania, so you have to drive through the whole state.
Okay. Okay.
But that's where Ohio is though, because we visited like Ohio before. Um, so Ohio is going to be further on that west end, and then
because I have to admit that I'm not entirely sure in my head where Ohio was in the map, but I assumed it was further than Pennsylvania.
it's like on like the west end of Pennsylvania.
Okay. Yeah, so it's further then.
I mean, yeah, they're relatively close. But I mean, my thing is I'm not exactly sure where New Jersey is in relation to it, and then it also depends on what part of the state you're on. So I don't know. So I mean, at the very least, though, it's not like they're getting there in like an hour or two. Like it's going to be pretty long.
Well, some dramatic license, all that jazz. So Laurie brings Freddy out into the real world, and because of that, now it's like even playing field because he can't use any magic tricks because he's not in the dreams anymore, and now it's just mano a mano. They're fighting. For some reason, there's a giant like work site or like I don't know if it was looking for the boss, but there's all these like gas canisters that like at one point Freddy starts like firing at Jason.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, whatever. Just go with it. Like I assume that if I don't know like what those are supposed to be, but I assume like if you chop off the nozzle or whatever, it doesn't send them flying like torpedoes. But hey ho. Yeah. And I think my theory is, and I think maybe maybe I'm pulling this from some of the other scripts, but I was thinking that like they were maybe putting a new campsite or condos or something up on Crystal Lake, and that's why there was like this construction.
That feels like the sort of thing that was maybe there in an earlier draft and kind of stuck around just to justify this, but no one really mentions it or talks about it. Yeah. That makes sense. But I mean, the fight is ridiculous. It's bloody. It's stupid. I do kind of appreciate like just how much blood is pouring out of them by the end of it.
Yeah.
Because the end of the fight's probably the best part, where like we get to the point where like Freddy cuts off some of Jason's fingers so he can't hold his machete, and then starts using his own machete against him, and then eventually, Jason cuts off the entire arm with the gloves on from Freddy, and then ultimately wins by stabbing him through the heart from behind with his own glove. Like, all that stuff is fun. Like, having them use each other's weapons against each other, obviously they had to do that. It's just too much of a fun idea.
Yeah, I like it.
What I do hate, though, is Monica Keena running in and being like, no, Freddy took everything from me. I'm not leaving anywhere until I see him die, with her performance.
Yeah, they threw in some backstory about like Freddy killed her mother or something, but it's like, who cares? Like, again, I can't stress enough how much like these characters are just so dumb and forgettable and like not needed for the story. Like, I mean, yes, you do need like human characters, but they just could have, either created better characters or like used existing characters from the franchise to justify it. Like,
or even at the very least, better actors who like.
Yeah.
That would at least be something. Did you enjoy the scene where her father roofies her drink? Did you enjoy that scene?
Oh yeah, great.
Because he's trying to like give her the pills that will make her not dream. Yeah. Good stuff.
So like, does everyone in the town take it? Because it seems like all the older people like know who Freddy is. So like,
well, I think the idea is that Freddy doesn't go after teenagers. Maybe they do all take it. Maybe but I got I've always had the impression that Freddy only really goes after, not including New Nightmare, obviously, because that's kind of separate. But like, it always seems to be younger people. Like, once you get like past 21, you seem to be safe.
So it's like, is that like part of his power? Like, he's like, well, I could go after these older people if I wanted, but I don't really like to kill like older people.
Yeah, he likes them young,
Yeah,
is what it is.
But I mean, if you're like, if you're begging to kill people because like that's what you want to do, like I feel like you can't be too choosy.
I mean, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. But that's the problem is though, if you go with it, even though I don't hate the idea of everyone like not knowing who he is, so that's why he has no power. It does kind of beg the question though: how did he start killing people in the first movie then? Because like none of the kids knew who he was.
That's very true.
You know, like the parents knew who he was, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I guess that's just some of the stuff you have to mash together to make this continuity work. The whole idea of the weaknesses though, and like Jason, like water being Jason's weakness, and it's not like fire being Freddy's weakness. It's not like it's not like he is repelled by it. It's his weakness in the same way that fire is everyone's weakness.
Yeah.
It's the...
Well, like these were their weaknesses when they were humans.
Yes.
Like I think it kind of doesn't really matter now. And like you said, it's not like specific to them. It's specific to every human. Like I think that it's an interesting connection to make. Like, oh, when they were human, one died from drowning, the other died in a fire. But like you can kind of reference that without being so overt and stuff. Like
I mean,
you could just like maybe do like a subtle thing. But
to go back to our pitch of just having like Tommy and Nancy being the main characters, what if instead of all this stuff where Freddy intentionally brought Jason to Springwood and all the other stuff, what if we simplify it to being just like, no, Freddy's still doing bad stuff, Nancy's like still like a therapist, she's trying to take care of all the young people in town she can, and she sees like a news story about Jason Voorhees, and she actually goes to find Tommy to say, hey, is there any way we can basically go get Jason because he's the only hope that we have of defeating Freddy. Just that simple. Sure. Like we need something as powerful and as evil to fight back. That it could be that simple, and that doesn't really mess with the continuity or retcon any logic into it. It's just as simple as, hey, if we get someone as badass as that and then pull Freddy into the real world, that could be something.
I know maybe now would be a good time to maybe talk about some of the alternative versions of the scripts, but I know a lot of the early ones centered around a cult that was obsessed with Freddy Krueger and was trying to resurrect him.
Okay.
And so I know for the first couple of ones, that was a big thing. And I think they did actually call themselves Fred Heads. Which is pretty good. Kind of nuts. And then, speaking about making changes to continuity, I know there's at least several drafts of the script where there would be flashbacks and you would find out that Freddy was a camp counselor at Crystal Lake.
I'm glad that didn't happen.
And it gets worse though, because not only was he a counselor there, but he also sexually assaulted Jason as a kid. Which is thank God. I think one actually had him as Jason's stepfather at one point.
Okay, I'm going to make this very clear. One of my pet peeves, and this happens a lot in comic books especially, but it happens a lot in any sort of sequels or remakes or stuff that isn't planned. Any type of retconning to put a new villain into someone's backstory to make them feel more personal, I hate. Just make this be the first time they meet the villain, and then build the reason why they hate them from here in present day, right? That is so much more meaningful to me. So, by the same token, if you're going to do a crossover like this, the fun of this is having two things that were never meant to be together, sort of clash, and seeing how they play off each other, and seeing how they interact and mingle. Writing in the backstory that Freddy was in Jason's past already completely kills the entire appeal of this.
Oh yeah, it's so annoying, and then I hate stuff like that, because then it always sticks in your head, and you're watching the original Fridays, and you can't help but think okay, so Freddy was here at some point, what the hell? But no, I agree with that though. I hate especially happens with a lot of comics. I feel like new villains now always have some type of history or something. You can't just have kind of random people anymore that just kind of show up and want to be a bad guy because they're bad people. Now it always has to have some grand legacy to the character.
I mean, this wouldn't really make that much sense.
I haven't read Punchline yet, so I don't know what her deal is, but
she's not really been explained yet. She's only appeared, but she's not really had much story yet. This kind of goes against obviously who Jason's been for all the movies, but I wonder if you could almost sort of swing something into I can see them try to work this into a script, and I wouldn't hate this as much, but what if Jason witnessed Freddy drowning a kid, and like it triggered something in Jason to want to kill Freddy because he's a child like predator. Like that would like offend
Sure.
Jason or something like that. Because Jason essentially died as a human as a child. You know, it was
That's true.
maybe there's something there. But I mean, they've never shown Jason to like not want to kill kids. You
Yeah.
know, that are under teenage age. I mean, maybe that's something. If you went back and like discovered if he had never killed an actual kid before, like I'm thinking like under 13. Like I wonder if you could somehow retcon into it that he actually just doesn't want to kill kids that are that young. Like, or at the very least, anyone who is younger than he was when he died. Like, that's off limits to him. Like, because it doesn't typically happen in horror movies because they don't want to go down that route of like making it really dark by killing kids. So you could almost try and argue that maybe if you want. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but it's better than everything you just told me that they thought of.
I'll say I'll include one last detail from a script because those are kind of like the big things I remember. The one last like big thing I remember that was in one of the scripts is that it essentially like took place in hell and ended in like basically a big boxing ring in hell where they were fighting. And I remember it was a detail in the script that like some of the people in the crowd that were watching the fight was like Hitler and Jeffrey Dahmer, which
See, if you were going to tell me it was a bunch of other horror movie characters, I'd have been like, okay, I mean, I like this.
like you could have easily had a Pinhead cameo or something like that there, but yeah, probably not the best idea to bring up like real world monsters like Hitler and stuff in your very silly horror movie.
Yeah, keep that separate. I don't want real monsters interfering with my fun pretend monsters. Okay, don't be doing that. So yeah, obviously the movie ends with Jason coming out of the water, holding Freddy's head, who does wink at the camera, and they put that in there because like they didn't want to piss off people who were bigger fans of Freddy than Jason. So the idea being, he's not really dead. I mean, Jason won, but he's not really dead. Actually, I really talk about this actually because I'd kind of forgotten about this moment. Is that after Jason jumps up and stabs Freddy with his hand, unfortunately, what's her face, Monica Keena, gets to get the killing blow by decapitating Freddy with the machete. And after she does so, she walks over to the edge of the pier, and Jason's like lying in the water, so sort of slowly sinking. And he looks up at her, and it's almost like a look of like, "Good job, kid," like coming from Jason. It's such a weird moment, and she throws in the machete out of respect, almost. It's like "Here you go, here's your machete." And all I could think was Jason X. He just wanted his machete back. It's such a weird moment. It's like, it's like a bonding moment where they respect each other. I'm like, that doesn't feel right for Jason Voorhees. Just this is like, as much as I don't like AVP, like I do think the idea of the Predator being more of an anti-hero who the human can team up with does make sense. Like, it's a more of an intelligent creature who's not necessarily completely evil. You know, we can question its enjoyment of hunting if you want, but like it's not inherently like a just a brainless creature. But hey,
do you remember what her line is? Like before she delivers that killing blow.
Oh yeah, because Freddy said the same thing earlier in one of the nightmares. She says, "Welcome to my world, bitch."
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Yes. Surprise, surprise. It whiffed on the ending moment. Yeah, I guess we're at ratings, Timmy. I guess we're at that point. How do you feel? What are you giving it?
So yeah, this one's tough. Again, I think it is like a pretty mixed bag. Because there's so much stuff to complain about. I hate the human characters. I don't think the movie looks good. A lot of the story, beats are dumb. But again, at the same time, I do think there is a level of fun to this. I think especially like more fun than like some of the other entries in the series. Like I would much rather watch this than like Freddy's Dead or Jason Goes to Hell.
I would agree with that.
But and like like some of the kills and stuff are still fun, and once they do actually fight, some of that stuff is pretty cool, and like you said, like a lot of the versus movies are do end up being bad. But it is still kind of, no matter how bad they are, it is always kind of cool to see this spectacle, like this coming
Mhm.
together of things that you never really thought you would have seen. So I think I'm just gonna go right down the middle and give it a 5. Because I like that it exists. I think there's some fun stuff. Maybe at least some of the cheesy stuff can make me laugh when I watch it, and there's decent enough kills and gore, and it is cool enough to see them together that um that I think that stuff uh does make it good to watch. But then at the same time, there's just so many stuff that's bad or annoying or missed opportunity that doesn't really make it like necessarily good on much of any level.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with the 5. I think like I still enjoy the fight at the end. I enjoy I think one of my favorite things about the movies is when the New Line logo's on at the start. It goes down, 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 down. Like just
That is really cool. Yeah.
yeah, that little thing is just gonna did that.
And like that's the thing that like when you see it, like watching it for the first time, that like gives you chills. Like,
it
ooh, like
does, it does,
this could be
yeah.
really cool.
It's one of those things where you have to incorporate those little things from each franchise to make it feel like everything's clashing together. But the characters are terrible. The acting for the most part is pretty terrible. When Freddy and Jason are on screen, typically I'm having some fun.
Yeah.
And some of the kills are fun. Some of them are a bit too CG or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I definitely like it less than I did when I saw it as a young teen. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
But I'll still give it the 5 because it is better than Jason Goes to Hell. It's better than Freddy's Dead. Friday 5 is an interesting one. I think there's a debate either way. I think depending, because I think Friday 5, while not that good, like maybe feels more like a Friday the 13th movie than the scenes in this does with Jason. Even though it's not actually Jason and so on, but like I don't know. Maybe it's just the 80s of the 80s of it is less is less annoying because this is so 2000s. But that's kind of where like most of the other Friday the 13th I would watch instead. Like 1 to 4, 7, 6, 7, 8, Jason X, I think are all better. As far as Nightmare on Elm Street is concerned, 1 through 4 is definitely better. New Nightmare, yeah, 2 for sure. 5. This is probably on par with 5, I'd say.
I mean, you know me, I'm a 5 defender, so I would take 5 over this any day. But
yeah, sure, but it's kind of where it is. But it's the last time we get to see Robert Englund as Freddy, in a movie, and so and this was technically the end of the current iteration of Jason. Although that said, though, all the rage now is doing direct sequels to the originals, even though there's been reboots and remakes already. Other franchises have done it, so it wouldn't surprise me if and when Friday the 13th does get to come back, if it's actually, all the history's intact from most of the other movies. Like, it's possible.
Yeah.
So, hey. But that is Freddy vs. Jason. We are shockingly close to wrapping up these two franchises. Obviously, this one counts for both. We just have the remakes left, which we will do during the Octoberthon 2020. So look forward to that, where we can finally cross those off. But you can, of course, let us know what you think of Freddy vs. Jason in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at Streams Midnight for channel updates, teases, hints, and witty jokes from Tim. I use that term lately. You can also, of course, get us on Apple Podcasts if you want to rate us on there. That helps out a lot. Give us 5 stars and a review. Same reason why we tell you to like stuff on YouTube, because it helps more people find us that way. YouTube will promote it a little bit more. And of course, patreon.com/MailFistTV we mentioned earlier. Support us financially over there, get some bonuses. That obviously helps a ton. So, but that is us. So thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.